Hello, hello. My name is Lakeisha Poole. I'm an author and writing coach, and I cannot wait to share this case study slash mini course on how I wrote and published a book in 20 days for $0. Now, I know this sounds like super impossible, probably, but I'm going to walk you step by step through the principles I use to help me go from book idea to book available for sale on Amazon in less than a month. And here's the thing, what I hope that you get out of this is less about having all of the details down pat on how to write and how to publish and all those things, but to really shift your mindset around the process of writing and publishing a book. Because one thing that I've noticed, not only in my own writing life, but also as I work with other authors and aspiring authors, is that we get stuck so very easily. We begin to overanalyze and we really want things to go according to this perfect plan. And that takes so much time. And it actually results in us procrastinating and just afraid to even put anything out there because we fear rejection, or we feel like people may say something negative about our stories. And so we never showcase our words to the world. And so by the end of this session, I hope and pray that you are excited about sharing your words with the world. I hope that you see a path for how you can begin this writing journey and you can get better and better over time, but you can also begin to build that community around your words. And so I will admit, I know that writing and working full time is so crazy, right? So this is something that I'm all too familiar with. My first few books, I wrote them while I was working in a traditional 9-to-5 job. I'm currently a consultant, writing coach, still doing client work and writing books at the same time. So I'm still not 100% focused on the fictional worlds that I'm building, right? So balancing all of these ideas that I have, it really has been, a stressful experience. But the beauty of it is that I've learned how to maximize my time. I have such a passion for the stories that I want to tell and for writing and for publishing that I'm like, oh, I just have to do what I got to do to get it done. The perfectionist side of me fights it all of the way because I feel like there needs to be this, perfect day where I can write for 8 hours or I can write every day. And, I just envision this lifestyle where I'm in a coffee shop and everything is just geared towards this writing life. But that's not my reality. And I'm curious if you feel me when I say that you have this dream and this fantasy of what you wish your writing life could be like, but it just doesn't match your current status. I don't want you to get caught up in that. Yes, we can acknowledge that balancing, family, work, dreams, passion, all the things, we can acknowledge that that can take a lot out of us, but it does not excuse us from pursuing our purpose. And if you are an aspiring author or a writer who has a story to tell, I believe that there's an audience out there waiting for that story. And so despite how crazy it is, I think that it truly is worth it. And so I believe that when you have the right strategy, you can navigate those uncertain waters. You can figure out what steps you need to take to make it happen, despite not having an full day, 8 hours of writing time. What can you do in 8 minutes? What can you do in 15 minutes? And so that's what I hope that you can kind of begin to plot your way to that strategy to write quickly and to get your book in front of readers and to do it all for free. You have to realize that writing and publishing, yes, it is a creative endeavor. And so I think a lot of times we get caught up in the artistic side of it. We have a gift, we have a talent. We just love the art of creating. But it's also a science. And so there are certain things that you need to understand about the writing process, about formulating a story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. It sounds simple, but I have seen where a lot of times people are writing and it just seems like a day in the life type of story, and it doesn't have a strong story arc. And lastly, it's a business. And so one reason why I am putting this case study before you and teaching you these principles is because I want you to begin to see how a book is a product. And so treat it like product development and less, my life's work. Now, if that's the vision you have for your writing life, where, you want to, just see yourself just creating this one major book, this one title that, and you want it to have a certain impact, and you're not necessarily thinking of it from the perspective of, reaching a lot of customers, that's totally fine. I think it's important to understand what type of writing life you want to have and to understand what kind of goals that you've set. And those are not based on anybody else's writing success or failures, but it's purely based on what you believe you need and you want. And so that is why I always encourage people to have a writing action plan so that you can get clear on, whether you want to write so that you can make $1 million or so that you can be on the New York Times bestsellers list, or because you enjoy it, or because you feel like this is a topic or issue that is important to a particular community and you want to make sure that you make a difference in their lives. Whatever reason you have, I think it's important to know it and to be clear about that. But when you decide to sit down and write a book, I want you to envision it holistically, that, okay, there is a creative side to this where I get to, do all the fun brainstorming and coming up with different ideas. There's a science to this where I have to structure those ideas into something that is cohesive, that people can comprehend, and that attracts an audience. And last but not least, it is a business. And so it can serve me in a way that I can actually generate income from it, and to just see it as a product. And the thing about products is, and you think about even, whatever you have right in front of you. If you're on your phone or your computer, you're probably on like the 30th edition of a particular computer or laptop, or you're on the 10th or 12th edition or version of a cell phone. And so when we talk about product development, it's, really important to just think about just how products show up in your everyday life, and you don't even think about it. And so when it comes to your books, it doesn't have to be perfect the first go around. Okay. And so I'm going to share with you over the next few minutes 5 principles that I believe will help you write quicker and better, so that you can really nail down not only the artistic side of writing, the science of writing, and the business side of writing. Now, the book that I'm going to focus on for this session, it all started with kind of a funny post that I shared on Facebook a couple of years ago. Maybe you're familiar with this on a lot of the stations like Lifetime and I'm blanking, Hallmark, like all of the cable stations. During the holiday season, they have holiday movies. And my mom and I were like watching all these movies and talking about these movies together. And she made this comment that she was tired of watching movies where the woman moves back to her small hometown and she falls in love, right? And it really does seem like these movies follow a formula for how the main character is gonna move back home and go through some issue and fall in love along the way. Despite the fact that it seems to repeat the same storylines over and over again, I watched and consumed every version of that story. And I noticed that my mom was doing the same thing. And so I posted it on Facebook because, I'm just sharing our experience. And I was just so shocked at how many other women were doing the exact same thing. We were all binge watching these stories. And I really enjoyed the stories. So it was something that I was familiar with. And so the first principle I need for you to understand is to think about your audience first and then the book. Now, as artists, a lot of times we can feel a sense of control and ownership of our work. And so we're like, I'm creating this for me. And again, that is totally fine. But if you're somebody who's trying to just go ahead and get something out there, I want you to think about your audience. Think about, those people, what type of books are they reading currently? What seems to attract a lot of attention? It is always easier to sell a product that that there's an audience that's out there that's consuming this content, that they're excited about it, they're ready, and they're waiting for it. And what made this choice for me to write a Christmas story make sense is that Christmas comes every year. These movies come out every year. Like, there is this audience that they're always searching and looking for positive, warm, friendly, any type of book or movie that, gets them in the Christmas spirit, so to speak. And so I witnessed firsthand, not only in my personal life, but on my Facebook timeline, all these people consuming this content. And so that was like my aha moment where, I'm like, okay, this is something that actually could sell well because there are people who want it. I think a lot of times people, when they see social media, they only see it as marketing. They only see it as a way to promote whatever products they have or to promote their services and things of that nature. I like to think of social media as also sort of a laboratory for product testing and connecting with real people. Granted, my personal timeline, a lot of these people, they may have similar interests, and so they are a little bit biased, but I still like to observe their, media habits, the type of shows that they're watching, the type of books that they're talking about, and just pose a question. Just, share my experience and ask, like, what do you think about this? Are you enjoying stories that, feature strong women who talk about their faith? And, they don't know they're being surveyed, and they give these really, really honest answers. And I just think that it's a really easy, simple way to begin connecting with people, because when you get to that point where you need to sell your book, it really is all about just connecting with people. It doesn't have to be sleazy. It's just finding the right person for your product. And so if you have a social media profile, you have an audience. You may not have 500 people on the email list. You may not have 1,000 followers or 1 million likes or anything like that, but you have an audience. You know people. And the sooner you begin to really observe those people and, ask them questions and get that feedback, I think the better you will be as far as continuing to build that audience in the future. Now, everybody on your timeline, they may not be your audience. In the future, these may not even be people who buy all of your books or any, like, don't set that unrealistic expectation for yourself. But I think it's important to start with what you have. And so if you have this audience of 100, 200, 300 people, and maybe only 10 or 15 respond to stuff, it doesn't matter. I think that it can give you insight into what steps you need to take as an author. And so for me, on day one was that crazy Facebook post. And when I got all of these responses, I was like, I think I might want to write a short Christmas story. I liked it. I felt like I was very familiar with the different tenets of the genre, because again, like I said, it was almost like the same blueprint of a story. Now, I knew that I wanted to put a little twist on it in some ways, but I felt like I had a good foundation of what I could write. And so once I, had it in my mind like, this may be something that I can pursue. So once I decided that this was something that I'm going to actually commit to, I put it back out to my audience, and my audience was my Facebook profile, like my friends, that was the only place that I actually posted about it. And it was just really cool to see the feedback in real time. And I think that for my audience, it also gave them the sense that they were actually participating in the process. And this isn't my first time writing like this. Like, I think that this is just an approach that I like. I like to invite my audience in. I like for them to feel like they have some ownership, isn't the right word, but they have some say, or they can participate and in the process and see sort of my behind the scenes. And so that was my day one. And the other thing that was important to me was I knew that I didn't necessarily want to spend a whole lot of money. It's December and it's the holidays, and I'm already spending a lot of money on, Christmas presents and all of those different things. And so I made the decision that for this particular project, because it was different than anything that I'd done, that I was going to keep the expenses really low. And when I say hard costs, that is like, the money it takes to buy things like materials or, so like buying a whole bunch of books. Like, I made the decision that whatever tactics I took with this book, I was not trying to spend any money. Like, I wanted to do it for free if possible. And, I know a lot of times people give advice, and I agree with it. I believe that you should invest in yourself. I believe that you should invest in your products and that process. But at the same time, I understand that when you're starting out, you may not have the budget for that. And so I made that conscious decision that with, again, this particular product, I was going to start with a very, very low budget. But if it did well, then I could take that money and reinvest it in the product and make it better. Again, mindset is, this isn't just a one-time thing where I write this book and I'm done. I'm looking at this like it's product development, and this is version 1 of my product. And so I decided on a title, which was Happily Ever Christmas. I designed a mock-up myself. So I actually just created an image of what the book cover could look like myself. I didn't hire a graphic designer. And I posted it, shared it with my audience one more time just to get their feedback. And so here was the Facebook post that I shared. I said, hey, you guys and my mom, you challenged me. And so short story coming soon. Now, to create my mock-up, I used a stock image website called Pixabay.com. I downloaded a holiday image. Now, you have to recognize that when you go to these websites that have free images, or any stock image website, a lot of people probably use the same images. But again, I was looking at this as a way to test out a product to see if it would be viable. And I didn't want to invest a lot of money on the front end. And so I downloaded a free image. I think I searched something like Christmas pictures or holiday pictures, and didn't have a story. Just knew it was going to be something Christmas related. And then I used Canva.com to create a cover. So it's all digital, and Canva has different templates that you can use to design, and it makes it really simple and easy for everyday people to create their own, visuals and book covers and things of that nature. And if you look at my book cover, it wasn't as good as a professional, but I felt like it was enough to test the waters. And so then I shared it on Facebook just to see what people thought about it, keeping them engaged, like keeping them updated. Like, hey, you remember yesterday when I was joking about how all these movies seem like they're the same? I went back to that original post and I commented this so that all of those people were notified that there was a new comment, and hopefully they came back and they saw that, oh, she's actually going to write a Christmas story. And so I gave them that update in that Facebook post. And so I chose to use a lot of free resources to stick to principle number 2 of trying to save my money and look at this as a test, like to just see what response I may get if I were to put forth a short story around Christmas time. And so I didn't put in any upfront money. There are lots of services out there that I use, and we're going to actually walk through some of those paid services later. But again, for just starting out in those first 20 days, I didn't spend any money. I did all the free things. Now, principle 3, we touched on this a little bit when I decided to do this, and it was only over the course of a few days. I did make sure that I was checking in and commenting and talking about it with people, because I think that it's important to continue to engage and, keep that attention and keep it going, because sometimes we'll post something that people find really, really interesting and exciting, but they forget all about it because their timelines are flooded with all kinds of content, all kinds of products. And so in my post, I, was responding to different people one-on-one and telling them, hey, I'll send you a private message updating you on the book. And, when it's ready, I'll let you know. I'll send you a link. And so don't think that posting about something one time is going to be enough. You have to have in your mind a way that you can continuously update people and share with them the process and the link to buy the product when it's ready. And I didn't sit down and spend hours and hours coming up with a complete marketing plan. I just really decided to focus on this audience. Again, I hone in on what they were interested in. These are people who responded and said that they like these type of stories. They engaged with me on my idea. And so I knew that if no one else bought it, or if I sold it to no one else, I was going to sell it to this audience first. And I just wrote down some simple tactics that I could do, where I would send them a private message on Facebook with the link so that they could buy the book when it was ready. And so I really doubled down on making sure that the book fit the type of story that my audience was interested in. And I was my audience, so I knew what type of things that would make it a worthwhile read. I wanted it to be short and sweet, because during the holidays, people are short on time. They just, want to sit down and relax for maybe a couple of hours. And so I was very intentional about making sure that my story, or, I set that goal that it would be a short story. It wouldn't be a 400-page, huge book. I brainstormed characters and plots that would resonate with my audience and, were things that I felt like were successful in a lot of the holiday stories that I'd seen. I began to conduct research around, developing the story that I wanted to create. I researched what type of career I wanted, my characters to have, what type of, setting I wanted to create. And that's when I started my storyline. And so I had a really good sense of what I wanted to do, and I just acted upon it. I think sometimes what keeps aspiring authors stagnant is that you can really spend a lot of time planning and plotting your way. And I know that different people have different outlining styles. That's something that I talk a lot about in my writing and coaching program. And I definitely have the outlining style of, I like to have a loose structure that I can be flexible with. I know some people, they like to have a really, really detailed outline. I don't necessarily need that. I just like to do little story mappings that I understand what characters I want to include, what places I want to include, what's the overarching message behind the story. And, just some of those details, I like to outline that. And then I'll write from that. I'll do note cards, and then I'll begin to just write based on that outline. One thing that made it easier for me to write fast is that I decided my character was going to have the same career that I had. My main character, she is a PR executive / corporate event planner. And so I was very well versed in that arena. She was based in Atlanta. That's where I'd lived and worked for several years. I was familiar with Peachtree Street and the area in which I wanted to place her. And so it just made it easy for me to just write because I was familiar with it. I think a lot of times we get a little too caught up in doing some research. Now, if you're interested in something, I understand the why it's essential to do research. And if it's something that you've never experienced or a place you've never been, you want to get it right. Like, don't come up with stories where you're talking about a real place and you're not familiar with it and you haven't done any research. And so I was familiar with Atlanta. And so that made it really simple and easy for me to incorporate different touristy spots, road names, and building descriptions and all of those things. And so that just made it easier for me to quickly build my story. I also interview or ask questions of people. My one of my friends is a doctor, and so I knew I wanted to have a medical crisis happen in the story. And so he probably thought I was crazy because I texted him and I'm like, what is something that somebody could potentially die of if they have surgery? And so he just walked me through what could possibly happen in a medical emergency that would fit with my story. And so never be afraid to reach out to your friends who have professions or who have, certain expertise and knowledge that can help you build your story. Don't think that everything has to happen with you Googling or reading all these different books. Leverage every connection you have to tell your story. So days 6 through 15, I was writing like a mad person. So I did dedicate quite a bit of time to writing. Now, I still had work obligations. And so a lot of times I was writing later in the evening or on lunch break or finding these windows of time where I could really focus on writing. I shared maybe the first 2 or 3 chapters with beta readers to determine if I was on the right track. So these are people who, they fit my audience. So I knew that, again, I tapped into that audience. I knew these are people who liked those stories and who could give me some honest feedback. And so when they read those first few chapters and they're like, oh my God, what happens next? I knew I was on the right track. Like, that's what I want my readers to think. And I want to keep those pages turning. And so when they gave me that feedback, I knew that I was on the right track for the story. Now, here's the kicker. I personally prefer to work with professional editors, but I understand that there is a cost to that. And because this was something that I was looking at as a test, I did not hire a professional editor. I self-edited, so that included so many rounds of editing. I'm talking about like dozens where I'm reading it aloud, I'm printing it out. I ran it through some editing software. Now, there is a free version of Grammarly. AutoCred is a software that I've paid for in the past, and so that kind of doesn't count with my whole free thing, but you can use Grammarly for free. And there are some other editing softwares or sites out there that will allow you to get some, suggestions on how to change things grammatically. But of course, I think that it works better if you are doing some self-editing too, because technology doesn't always get it right. But for this particular project, I did not go my usual route of bringing in professional editors or a whole lot of beta readers. I just wanted to get this thing to market and test it and to see if it was viable, because I had in my mind that this is a long-term strategy for producing holiday, stories, or just the idea that this is something that would be seasonal, where people would want to buy this book every holiday season. And I felt like I could get it good enough that I could improve upon it based on the feedback. And so that was like a crazy week, because I decided to write something that was short and sweet. I didn't have to spend, months and months writing. I was aiming for something that was around 15,000, 20,000 words. And so I really just worked really hard to stay within that window of a word count. And it just made it a whole lot easier to not only do the writing part, but to do the editing part. So here's the thing. With all of my hard work and effort, I missed my deadline, y'all. I really had my heart set on having the book done before Christmas. Yeah, it didn't happen. It did not happen. And I was very disappointed. I was very, uh, critical of myself, even though I knew that I'd been working like crazy to get this book done and to also take care of other business and to also, be there for my family. So it was very disappointing. And so you will have those moments where you set a goal and you don't quite reach it. And I see it happening all the time in my life and with others. We give up at that point. We decide, oh, that must mean that it wasn't meant to be. Well, no. Principle 4, you've got to follow through no matter what. You got to keep going. You got to pick up where you left off. You got to push through. Now, I hadn't promised people that it was going to be done by Christmas. That was just myself, that was something that I said for myself. I hadn't communicated a specific day. I just said it was coming soon. And so I also realized that even though a lot of people read a lot of books or watch a lot of holiday movies leading up to Christmas, some people like to keep that thing going until New Year's Day. So there was still hope for me. And so that's why I kept going. So I continued to work on finalizing the book. I uploaded it to Amazon KDP. So that's what I decided to use to self-publish the book. And Amazon KDP allows you to publish on Amazon completely for free. Now they get a cut, but it does not cost you anything upfront. And I decided to publish the ebook first so that because I just didn't have time to get a paperback to review. And so that's why I went with publishing the ebook on Amazon first. I created a custom link so that I could track how many people were clicking, who all was interested on that. So the audience that I promised I was going to send a link to the book to, I messaged them the bit.ly link so that they could go and buy the ebook. And so I just sent that to them directly through Messenger. I then decided to share it more broadly with, my contact list. And so you may not have an email list, but I just said something about, hey, I have this new project, and I shared it with my broader email list of folks who had supported me in the past. I began to just promote it all over social media. Like once it was done, I posted it all on, Facebook, Instagram, beyond just my personal profile. I probably paid to do some promoted posts, but I really thought it was interesting, the reception it received, even though it was after Christmas. And so once the ebook was out there, I was working parallel on the printed version and had requested a proof so that I could hold it in my hands. I could see what it looked like. I could read it page by page and make sure there were no errors. And for both ebooks and paperback books, Amazon does offer templates that you can use if you don't feel comfortable with coming up with your own printed template for the interior pages of your book. And so you can use those templates to design the actual pages of your book to make sure that it fits within the Amazon standards. And so that's something that I've done so many times. It's almost second nature for me. But if you're just starting out, you will want to build in probably a little more time to actually design those interior pages, because, it can take you a little while to get, comfortable with designing those interior pages. The last principle that I want to really highlight is just, you have to realize when it comes to publishing a book, it really is a process that you get better and better over time. You're not going to come out the gate. You may, but particularly if you're interested in self-publishing where you're doing a lot of the work yourself, it's not going to reach or meet your standards. You have set a level of perfection that you want to reach, that you want everything to look a certain way or go a certain way, and it may not, happen that first go round. And so if you look at it as a process of continuous improvement, then you know that, okay, I'm going to do the best I can with what I have right now, but I know that I can continue to improve upon it. So we have to stop aiming for, this perfect start, and instead look at creating a process that really feeds our writing life and our audience long term. Like, I knew what type of writing life I wanted to have as an author, where I had this flexibility to come out with stuff really quickly. So that's the reason why I chose the self-publishing route. I wanted to, keep as much of my royalties as I could. And I knew what type of audience that I wanted to connect with. And so when you have those things in mind, you can then create that blueprint for how you're going to publish your books. Just because something didn't work this time around, that doesn't mean it won't work next year. That doesn't mean it won't work tomorrow. That doesn't mean it won't work next week. And so again, when you take that product development approach, you realize that it's all about testing, putting something out there, getting feedback and improving on it, putting something out there and seeing what people say about it, and then improving on it. And so it's just this ongoing process where you're able to get it perfect eventually. It won't be perfect when you start out, but it will get to that point as you continue to put your stuff out there and connect with your audience. And so from day 21 to present, I've continued to, work on this book. I've revised it. I've changed some of the content and made it longer because I paid for a manuscript evaluation and I got feedback from an editor. I then began to sort of research some of the best practices when it comes to when to publish a Christmas story and, when to promote it. And so I knew that, so I published the first version in 2018. In 2019, I probably started promoting the story in October because I didn't know that that was a time that people would, start promoting their Christmas story so early. I got a new cover design. I still didn't invest a whole lot in the cover design. I found a cover designer on Fiverr, and I think it cost maybe $30, $40 to have that new cover design, but it made all the difference. I feel like it's a way better cover than what I designed. Again, the cover designer still used stock images, and so I've actually seen this image on other books, and so I'll probably switch out that cover again eventually. But for the past couple of years, is done really, really well because it gives you that Christmas spirit, and I think it reflects a lot of the themes in the book. I then began to just design new marketing materials. I tested new taglines. I didn't really change the blurb or the book description, but I did start using this tagline: "Tragedy brought her home. Love just might make her stay." And that, when I just post that, people automatically get what the story is about, and it really attracted more interest. And beyond that, I just started working on my next book. I started working on my next book project. I, again, treat this as something that is seasonal and that I can promote and earn some extra income every holiday season. In 2020, to actually drive up some awareness of the book, I did a virtual event on, healing from, loss and going through those type of things because that's something that my main character faces. And so that was another way to connect with my audience and to expand my audience because it allowed me to get some email addresses of folks who are interested in this topic and for me to have an impact. I was able to share really great information and tips with people who are dealing with loss. It attracted more purchases and people would post about it on social media. I was able to participate in some virtual promotional events and, do some fun stuff on Instagram to promote the book. And so, again, I'm looking at this as something that every year I'm probably going to do something different and special to highlight this story. I'm already thinking about what I want to do for 2021 to highlight my characters, to highlight this topic so that I can, increase the buzz and interest in this story. Because even though I've talked about it in the past, there's still so many new readers who have no idea that this book exists. And so don't ever feel like you've talked about your stuff too much. There's so many people who have not seen what you've posted. And so I'm curious, what book is your audience waiting on you to write? You've had these ideas, you've thought about it over and over again, but you're just still stuck in, planning mode or still stuck in trying to figure it out mode and start just right mode. And I want you to just make that decision today to connect with your audience and share a little something with them. Get a little feedback from them so that you can, begin to see that there is an audience that is ready and waiting for your story. They're not going to reject you. They're not going to completely tear you apart. They're actually excited for you. They're looking forward to your story. And so when you approach it with this mindset of, I could just start with what I have and improve upon it over time, I think that will help you write quicker and better.